Well, where I should start? I'm going to try to make this as easy to follow as possible. I hope I can actually do that because I can barely follow it myself. I recall my friend David telling me about Angel's trumpet and how cool it was, but I guess he left out all the bad shit he saw. I had come across the plant itself many times, never knowing what it actually was. I had obtained a large quantity, about 90, Datura stramonium seeds from a friend. I read a few hundred articles about it in various places on the internet. I read that Datura contains both atropine and scopolamine that interface directly with the CNS, central nervous system, so I know this is going to be very hard to control and could have prolonging after effects. I came to the conclusion to do a small amount. Now to the story. It was a Friday night. I was bored, nothing to do, so I figure it was about time to take the seeds I bought nearly a month ago. I wanted to do it when I had a long period of time to recover. So I took a deep breath and poured 35 seeds into my mouth and chewed them for about 2 seconds and about gagged and quickly swallowed them and chased it with water. About 5 minutes later I remember this should take about 30 minutes to 3 hours to start, so I start playing Half-Life, and at about the part when you start meeting Marines is when I felt a little weird. I take a look around and feel my legs getting a little numb, so I figured I have to stand up for a bit. Well, that didn't work, I just fell over. I remember taking it and remember other people saying that they get all drunk and feeling, so I just disregarded it and got back on my computer. I feel a lot weirder now than I did on the floor. I don't know how long I was there, but all I know is that I'm in a different state of mind now. I look back at my monitor and I try to move the mouse and it's gone. After a while of trying to find it, I give up and use my keyboard. All I wanted to do is play some music, so after like 60 Ctrl-Alt-Delete I come to the conclusion it's frozen, so I restart. Nothing happened. I do it again and again and finally it starts. I'm not sure if this was just the Datura or my computer was fucking up. The computer started and I forgot my password and I am so mad. All I want to do is play some music. Then I punch the keyboard, it works, but my sink started to spray water all over the place. I'm a bit confused and I go to turn it off, and as soon as I hit the tile it turns off. I do a little dance back and forth from the carpet to the tile, turning the water on and off. It was so funny. But then it doesn't stop, the water is going everywhere and I can't stop it. I try to turn it off by hitting my keyboard, but nothing happens. I decide it's best to just leave before I drown. So I go to my room and shut the door. By this time my mouse is back and I put on Tool's Enema and go lay down because I really want to get off the carpet for some reason. I lay down and my pillow is getting me angry, it keeps blocking the music, so I get rid of it by putting it in my closet and go back to laying down trying to figure out what music is playing. I get up to check the song on the playlist, but my mouse is gone again and I decide it's Jason's fault. Well, Jason is a friend that lives in Texas and I have to find him to get my mouse to come back, so I asked my roommate for $16 to fly to Texas. He told me that I wouldn't stop asking him for money, even though explained a plane ticket to Texas would cost like $400, and I told him that I had a guy who stole a plane is waiting outside for me and he's a bum, so all I need is $16 and a pack of cigarettes and he will fly me to Texas. Well, I don't remember when or how I got back into my room, but I did and I couldn't get out. My roommate probably locked me in. I look around and I have these crazy twisty posters I get at a gift swell. I escape through one of them and I'm outside and I see the plane just about to take off. And I just sit down on a bench and a plane lands and there is Jason with my mouse in his hand and I'm so happy. But when I go up to him he gets very mad at me because he had to pay the bum $16, and he smashes my mouse and kicks me in the knee and I fall down. I look back up and I'm in my room again. And at this point I am very scared because for a second everything's the same again and my arms are stuck inside my shirt and I need to get them out to stop the walls from getting any closer, and I rip through my shirt and I'm leaning on the wall trying to stop the wall from crushing me and everything in my room like a garbage compactor. Well, I wasn't strong enough and I was crushed. I appear in my old house in Tampa and my friend that died like 2 years ago is there and I'm a ghost, and we talk for a while and he is real mad at me and said I killed him, but I didn't, and he casts me to hell. This is where it gets bad. I'm in a room where the corners of the room are flashing bright red and every time they flash it hurts a lot. And I cover my eyes but nothing I can do stops the light. I can see it in the same spot no matter what I do, and my friend's parents are there yelling at me and crying saying that I killed their son and hitting me with those glow ones from Demolition Man. Then I look up and they're gone, but my friend's there and he gives me a cigarette and I take it only to keep him happy with me, and I light it up and it burns my lungs, but I keep smoking it to keep him happy despite the terrible pain that comes with every drag. After about 60 or so cigarettes I tell him I don't want any more and he kicks me and I fly back from my poster onto my bed and I look around, everything is back and I'm in my room, and that scares the fuck out of me. So I get under my bed and try to go to hide by putting everything I can around the edges of my bed, but everything is so incredibly heavy I can only lift small objects like CDs and pens, so I decide to hide in my closet. Well, I get in there and my pillow is there and I don't want it to stop the sounds of someone coming in my room, so I get rid of it by putting in my dresser, but it won't stay closed and this makes me very pissed off, so I kick the shit out of it, but I'm very weak and anything I do is in like slow motion and I can't seem to get it closed, so I just trap it in my blankets and throw it out of the window. But I can't close the window. So I go back into my closet and I see like 80 copies of myself and it's so crowded in there I can't breathe and I pass out. And I keep hearing like a sweeping noise outside of the room I am in. I'm in one of those portables they have in overcrowded schools and I know whatever it is they're going to get in somehow and get me, so I try to hide, but it's just a room, nowhere to go. And I hear all these banging noises like it's trying to break the door down, and I get a desk and throw it at the wall and it breaks a hole in the wall and it's very bright outside. I get the courage to go outside and nothing's there, so I get my welding glasses out and put them on and I can see clearly now, and there it is, a big fucking tornado. I go back inside and it hits the building and kill everyone in the area and I'm all alone, bodies everywhere. Then I see my house, I'm like, oh fuck, my brother was home, and I start to like rip the debris apart and like I'm fucking Superman, I'm like throwing huge pieces of broken house with ease, but the house was like made of puzzle pieces and I couldn't get them to stack up, they kept falling over back onto the pile. I try for days but everything I do causes more damage and the pieces keep getting smaller and smaller until it's like a big multicolored pile of sand, and it's like the future and everything is more advanced and developed, but this small section of land where my house of sand is and I'm in a glass ball and there are like aliens looking at me through the glass and shaking it around like a snow globe. And one of the alien kids turns it over and the house of sand falls on me and I suffocate. I wake up to my roommate yelling at me, asking me why am I in his closet and why did I throw his pillow out the window. I tried to tell him that it was going to stop the sound, but he can't understand. So he explains to me that I must be high and he thinks I'm on acid. I tell him acid is not good for him and that he should try something that I have. And I handed him an empty bottle labeled Datura, and it all hits me, it was all just a very bad trip. So I call my parents and they're a little confused why I asked if they were okay. So I hang up and go take a shower trying to get back to normal. It took about 6 to 8 weeks until I could actually see straight and sleep regularly and not expect to be killed at any moment. I am a white male in my 30s who is looking to relive his old college days of partying. I still smoke weed occasionally and might do cocaine if I'm with certain old friends, but my life for the last few years has been pretty stable until recently. I had a divorce several months ago and subsequently lost custody of my 8-year-old daughter and my home. Although I had never done hard drugs, I tried for about 3 weeks after the divorce and court hearings to find something from my old college friends to get really high off of. I didn't want something crazy like heroin, but I'm in the middle of a midlife crisis of sorts, so I thought that maybe mushrooms or LSD could help me out with my problems. None of my old buddies could deliver though, and as someone who lives in the suburbs with a small circle, it's hard to find connections for certain things. Upon doing some research, however, I came upon the subject of this trip report and decided it might be best to order some stramonium seeds from a reputable source. I originally intended to do them with an old work buddy, who I've had some wild nights with, at his place, but I won a work raffle for some concert tickets, so we decided to go out to a concert instead. D0. We are on the way to the concert and I am in the passenger seat of my friend's Volvo. I ingest a little over half of the packet of seeds I bought online and am pleased with the taste. We are seeing a well-known band called Train Play. I was not very familiar with their music, but my friend says it's gentle and that we shouldn't have any problems. He puts on a song called Hey Soul Sister on the Bluetooth, and I remember laughing about how I heard it 100 times on the radio when I worked in a coffee shop in college. D plus 30 minutes. We arrived at the venue and walked through the gate into a big lawn area. The security was pretty tough and they made me empty my bags and pockets and even waved a metal detector over my body, which admittedly made me sweat a bit. The inside of the venue was a big green field with some statues and a stage and a pavilion at the end of the hill. I remember the sound being phenomenal and how the ground shook when the bass player in the opening band would hit an especially low note. My friend let me hit his dab pen by a rooster statue as we drank some beers together. It is a Tuesday. D plus 55 minutes. At this point of the report is where things get weird. You see, the purchase of the stramonium seeds was a bit impulsive on my part. I did not do much further research on their nature apart from finding out they were a legal way to trip. At this point forward, there are things I remember happening and things that I do not remember happening but heard about from my friend. I recall the opening band finishing a song and there is a silence for about 30 minutes before Train comes on. I feel a slight unease about it but drink another IPA thinking that I'm just nervous about going out on a Tuesday. My friend tells me I have the jitters and I'm psyching myself up, so he gives me a back rub on the grass. There are some children watching me as my friend digs into my lower back. I moan gently as he pops some vertebrae and a mother pulls her kid back towards their blanket several yards away. The show is also an early one. I haven't been out in a while, so apparently things like this usually start later in the night. Train is supposed to come on around 7:30. D plus 1.5 hours. At this point train has not come on and I'm starting to get irritated. We forgot to bring a blanket, so we are sitting directly on the grass in front of the rail. The tickets that I won from the raffle only allowed me lawn access, but I desperately wanted to head into the pavilion for some reason. I am starting to pull out the grass around me and have started to create patches of dirt within a 3-foot radius of my body before my friend tells me to stop. He hands me a Panic Pete stress toy from his bag that he brought just in case I felt weird, and I massage his head for a while. D plus 1 hour and 45 minutes. The lighting around us darkens and the audience screams. I see several figures appear on stage and train has finally come on and Pat Monahan immediately launches into their hit single Play That Song. I get up and start leaning on the rail and bobbing my head while I sip my IPA. It felt good to be out and to feel young again, and I recall smiling as the ground pulsed under my feet. I was admittedly a little nauseous, but I kept drinking my beer. The Panic Pete was in my pocket at this point, but I recall saying Play That Song several times while my friend looked at his phone. D plus 1 hour and 55 minutes. After another song or two I looked to the right of me on a concrete path and I saw a familiar face. It was an old friend from college who I hadn't seen in several years, so I called out to him hoping he would recognize me. After about a minute of yelling he looked over and threw up his hands in a come here motion. I immediately headed over to him and his group and embraced him. It has been hard since the divorce and seeing friends again was such a relief. He offered me a cigarette and told me to come down to the floor stage area with him. I normally don't smoke, but I felt obligated to accept the cigarette. The band was right there and Monahan even winked at me at one point while I stared at them. We caught up for a while and I told him about my life situation. He was in something similar about a year ago and gave me some kind words before he introduced me to the co-workers he was with, who I had some light conversation with before he told me they all had to head out for a flight in the AM to a conference. D plus 2 hours and 20 minutes. After they left I was hanging around on the floor still smoking a cigarette before the staff told me I couldn't do that in the pit. I kept taking pulls on the American Spirit my old friend gave me on my way back out to the lawn, where I found my friend, who was clearly concerned upon seeing me. He told me I started screaming when they jammed in to drive by and that I ran off for about 30 minutes before he had to de-escalate a situation with security about me pacing in circles talking to myself and occasionally sucking on the Panic Pete. This is when I realized I was fucked and things became very blurry after this point. I went into my pocket to find the stress toy and to my despair it was no longer with me. I urged my friend to come with me to find it, but he dragged me back to our spot in front of the rail. I am also starving at this point and apparently I grabbed some nuts out of my pocket to eat while I sipped on an IPA. This did not happen. According to my coworker, I finished my IPA before I ran off, and the nuts I was eating were in fact the patches of grass I ripped out of the ground earlier. My co-worker said he left to take a call for 5 minutes and found me hanging out with a 7-year-old girl who was joining me for the grassy treat. We were singing Calling All Angels together and eating dirt before he discovered a middle-aged mother trying to drag her child away from me. He is asking me to leave and I apologize as I attempt to regain my composure. We are leaving in 15 minutes. D plus 2 hours and 45 minutes. At this point my coworker is watching my every move. I see him in the face of every person around me. His eyes are the children's eyes and the parents' eyes, and the staff's eyes. He tells me the set is ending soon. They play Marry Me into Hey Soul Sister and I break down sobbing. I miss my wife. People around me are moving away as I hang on the rail and cry and moan. There are spiders crawling on me and I feel like my penis is going to fall off for some reason, but I desperately want to masturbate while they close to drops of Jupiter. D plus 3 hours. I blacked out for a while and do not remember very much of what was actually happening at this point. My coworker said he started to walk me to the car by my hand and that I kept trying to talk to people who were not there until I started swinging my fists wildly and screaming in a wooded area outside of the venue. During this period in my altered state I was convinced that I was talking to Train outside of the venue and that Pat Monahan told me he had sex with my wife, which deeply enraged me. In my state it started with me telling him that I loved his set and that he loved my wife as he winked at me, and then I immediately threw him to the ground. We tussled for a bit in my own reality as my coworker had to drag me by the collar of my shirt across an intersection to his car while I thrashed about. D plus 3 hours and 45 minutes. My coworker told me at this point that he restrained me with seatbelts in the back of his car and that I would thrash about and scream unless he put on Train. I was alternating between screaming at the top of my lungs, "Play that song! Play that song!" and going completely silent. After about an hour's worth of driving, he walks me into my home and says he needs to go home and get ready for a bed. It is not even midnight yet and I feel absolutely insane. I do not know how much longer this will last. D+4 hours. My last clear memory after my friend left was watching TV in my kitchen, which is strange because I do not have a TV in my kitchen. The next 6 hours are a blur, but I remember leaving my house and coming back several times. I may have also talked to some people, but I am not sure if they were real or not. D+10 hours. This is the point where I begin to sober up early in the AM. I have destroyed my house and vandalized my living room with a Sharpie. There are strange sentences and symbols on my walls. There is also a cheese Danish and half of a carton of cigarettes that has bite marks in it in my bathtub. I have also pissed and shit on my carpet. I call my office and leave a hopefully coherent voicemail where I lie about being sick and pray my boss does not suspect anything strange or my coworker rats me out. I attempt to fall asleep and try to rest at this point, and after crashing for about 12 hours I wake up to a phone call from my ex-wife reminding me that she wanted me to watch our daughter tonight. She said she would be by 9:30. My house is still in ruins. I sigh and whisper under my breath, "Play that song." In my quest for centeredness, I have made a few wrong turns, a few blunders, but none as serious as this. Datura, Angel Trumpet, was my selection for consciousness expansion one day. Several leaves placed in a pot, and boiled in a small quantity of water. The tea was nutty and earthy, as described in other accounts I had read in my research beforehand. About 15 minutes after my 4 ounces cup of tea, my memory stops. I came to the next day in intensive care, strapped down to the bed, still hallucinating. 10 to 15 minutes after drinking the tea, my speech became slurred and I was unable to walk. I sat down on my friend's bed and leaned against the wall. Everything from here on is what I've been told, as I have absolutely no recollection of the events. I sat there, my condition slowly degrading, fading in and out of consciousness. The more attentive of the two friends in the room checked my heart rate and breathing often, to make sure I was okay. I muttered a lot of things that didn't make any sense, smoked imaginary cigarettes, and scratched madly at my skin. I eventually slipped under and didn't wake up. My temperature steadily rose, and then D&T decided to call my roommate, who called my father. I was driven to the emergency room. Somewhere along the way, I regained consciousness, and continued smoking my imaginary cigarettes and muttering to myself. I had a cold stare, and looked through people without recognizing them. At the hospital, I became violent. I assume this is because they were attempting to put an IV in my arm, or something equally unpleasant, and I, in my hallucinating state, didn't take kindly to it. After taking several clumsy swings at the doctor, my father punched me in the forehead hard enough to knock me back onto the bed, where I was quickly strapped down. I shortly went into respiratory arrest, and my clothes were cut off of me to facilitate the nurses. My memory starting up again does not coincide with waking up, I simply start remembering. I was fighting with all my strength against my bonds. The nurse would ask me to stop, and I would comply, but then forget and resume my struggle. I saw ants crawling all over the far wall, and wouldn't believe the nurse when she told me there was nothing there. I begged for her to untie me so I could go look for myself, but she wouldn't. The ceiling rippled whenever I looked at it, and spots on the wall grew legs and walked around as huge spiders. I caught myself talking to people who were neither in the room, nor the state several times. There were moments of total lucidity sandwiched between hallucinations. I had an 4 in my arm, a tube in my nose, a catheter, which was none too comfortable, and band-aids all over from various injections. It took a couple days, and several psychiatrists before I was permitted to go home. My eyes are still dilated, and my chest hurts from fighting the straps that secured me. I'm riddled with needle holes, and completely lacking physical strength. I am left with the same nagging questions about life, thousands of dollars in hospital bills, and now most of my family and friends think I am completely out of my mind for drinking that poison tea. I had intentionally consumed very little, going by a guide another user of Datura had posted, but apparently my biochemistry differs from his. Death was not the object of the game, and if it isn't what you're after, stay far, far away from the devil's trumpets. These events happened a while ago, Yet I took careful notes before and right after at the time. I've decided to submit it now, reason being, I was a military man at the time, and took no chances of my idiot buddies perhaps reading about such special hobbies. I was considered weird enough already in this tight-knit community, better be safe than sorry. Midsummer 2001 I took a trip to a favorite place by some lakes and swamps, deep forest, warm southern sun dancing through playful clouds above. Brought a book bag of clothes, food and a six-pack along too. I've studied Datura in the past, using a broth with bacon grease and leaves boiled as a gentle afternoon sleep aid. This day I gently plucked 3 large immature pods from a nice cluster of plants sitting on sandy mounds of an old construction site. Using my knife I slashed the pods and scooped out the white softer seeds. Later in the season Datura seeds become black and very hard, gobbled them up like a bowl of pork fried rice, smoked a cigarette. Strolled along small brooks, shrugging off the day's mundane events at work, glad to be off duty. About an hour passed with no unusual events. Moved into deeper forest, it was late afternoon. Looking up through the trees, noticed the leaves were made of leather and had the sound of leather jackets being shaken, as the wind blew. Yep, different sensations too, kind of like those psilocybin type mushroom trips. This passed in about half an hour, and I was feeling straight and normal again. Had a beer, then another, smoked some cigarettes and thought of walking back and scooping some more seeds, yet logic told me not to. I noticed anything very close to me, like a hand in front of face, was blurry. I couldn't read my notebook either. A dry mouth and sore throat developed like when I have a real bad cold. Kept wandering gentle hills in deep forest, no trails, no one around. It was frustrating discovering I could not piss no matter what, and it was beginning to freak me out, but no big deal, kept trying regardless. I could piss after a long while. The sun was going down with a splendid orange glow, the sights and sounds of a southern forest were amazing beyond description. I noticed that I left my book bag somewhere. Shit, I had nothing but jeans, boots, t-shirt and beer cans swinging on that plastic, and I was spending the night. Dashed all over looking for my bag, no luck at all. I noticed I was not alone anymore. Against a tree, hands pointing up along the trunk stood a tall young man. He was wearing hunter's camo, face carefully painted, he had a tall rough spiky mohawk hairstyle, plastered in gray camouflage paste. I politely said hello, and walked on by. The guy shifted his eye but ignored me. I thought that was weird. What is he doing? Was he a poacher, doomsday paranoid neo-Nazi survivalist? Where's his weapon? How many more? Should I get the fuck out of here? Where's my damn book bag? It was getting frustrating, when I just wanted to enjoy dark night entering, ushering the day away. Walked on, there was a car and 2 men standing nearby, talking. One black guy, one white guy with glasses, both wearing BDUs, woodland camouflage issue uniforms. I figured out they had to be NCOs or officers standing by while their soldiers trained. I walked up to them and very politely asked if anyone runs across my book bag, to just yell for me and I will come and get it. They looked at me like I was an asshole, and kept on with their conversation. I noticed their BDUs were a different pattern than ours, figured they must be British. I've ran into those chaps at the time occasionally. It got darker, I walked around all over the place. I saw more British soldiers. Some crouched against rocks, their camo cover master jobs, which I briefly admired. I saw a dugout fighting position reinforced with wood, well concealed. It got dark, an incredible silver moon came out, visibility was splendid. I decided to forget the lost book bag, it was summer after all and I still had beer swinging at my side. I saw a tight line formation of soldiers marching down a hill, thought it strange and made no sense. Why would they train like that? A machine gun would mow them right down. There were others sitting, well concealed, eating, making hardly a sound. I walked to a very large tree laying on its side, its roots torn high above me. I looked up, and in the moonlight right above me was yet another man blending into the roots, pointing to the sky but looking straight in my eye, his mouth wide open. Eventually I finished the beer and went to sleep on the forest floor. Woke the next morning feeling strange, found my book bag after combing the woods a while longer. I walked past the place where the car was, and realized there's no way any car could drive there. The people I saw seemed real, and to this day I have trouble grasping that they may have been not too real after all. An interesting footnote, this area has seen a lot of violence and death during the Civil War, many soldiers got killed on the ground I walked on. Datura is strange indeed, I took it once more in my life, I don't think I will mess with it again, but who knows, it's abundant after all. Before I begin the actual story of the trip, I'd like to give you, the reader, a look at what happened leading up to the time of ingestion. It won't take long, but gives you a better understanding of how my entire personality changed due to the ingestion of the drug. I was at my cousin's house with a friend. For now we'll call my cousin Mark and the friend Mo. We showed up at Mark's house at about 9. I met Mo there and we ended up taking turns at playing socom in the living room, ripping on each other for no apparent reason, and eating what was left of the food in the house. Me and Mo went into the bedroom because there was cable in there and he wanted to ask me something. He asked me if I was down for getting fucked up. I was always down, but we had to walk somewhere to get them. We then walked out, rode our bikes down to Main Street and picked a few seed pods of something we had no idea the origin of. We headed back to the house, throwing caution to the wind. I took 2 pods full of seeds with a glass of water. Him being much smaller and never having any experience with any kind of drugs only took 1. Mo weighs only about 140 pounds. It only seemed right that he took a smaller dose than I. I then laid down on the bed and stared up at the spinning ceiling fan. From this point on, I'm going to tell you what I remember and what witnesses told me had happened. About 20 minutes after ingestion I started feeling strange. I felt good. I thought it was similar to the effects of smoking marijuana, but it wasn't. The only similarity between the two is all of a sudden I had bad cotton mouth. I got a glass of water and went outside to check if my uncle had any snuff in the truck. He did and I put in a pinch of Copenhagen. At this point I felt very odd. I was stumbling around, slurring my words, and sweating more than usual for the current temperature. I couldn't handle the small chew I had and started to gag because of the extreme lack of moisture in my mouth. I took it out, stumbled back into the house and grabbed another glass of water. I went back into the bedroom and laid down on the bed and watched the ceiling fan once again. All of a sudden, a hazy purple spot started appearing on the ceiling. I was intrigued by this so I stayed and watched them for a while. Time after ingestion, roughly 1 hour. Mo entered the room and asked if it was okay to turn the lights off. I had my fill of the purple haze, so I agreed to the blackout. I closed my eyes and it was like a laser show. Images of random objects drifted in and out of sight while circular designs danced in the background. From here on, what I remember will be in quotes and what happened that I have no recollection of will be in stars. The following will be in chronological order to the best of my abilities. At this point I was drenched in sweat so I was inclined to take off my shirt. I then went to the bathroom to splash water on my face and ended up completely undressing. I have no idea where Mo was, nor what he was doing. I was naked in the bathroom and I started throwing punches. Hard punches. I was boxing anything in the bathroom that wasn't bolted down. According to Mark, my uncle was awoken by the noise and got up to check. I was all of a sudden shirtless in the living room, sitting on the couch, looking up at Mark and my parents. I was disoriented. Not sure of where I was. All I did was what my parents asked me to, which was put on my shoes and shirt and get in the car. I got up to walk out the door. I was driven back to my house in the country. I'm not sure what words were exchanged between me, my mother, and my father, but I doubt there were any. I came to on another couch. Mine. Looking up at my father, who didn't look particularly disappointed, but more amused at my odd and silly behavior. I kept on having this sudden urge to get up, yet every time I attempted to, my father's stern voice chimed in saying stay down, don't get up. I kept trying and he started to laugh as every time I got up, I'd sheepishly sit down. I felt like I was 9 years old, doing as I was told or I'd be sent to my room, or worse, the corner. After many attempts, I thought I'd go at it at a different angle. I have to pee, I said. He looked at me with a warm smile and took my hand and helped me to the bathroom. I felt secure for some reason. I wasn't able to stand so I sat as my dad snickered in the doorway. I looked up at him again, wondering why I kept feeling younger and more helpless as the time passed. I can't go. Stop laughing, I said. He then helped me up and put me back on the couch. I sat and strained my ears for the conversation that went on between him and my mother in the other room. I kept hearing horrifying words like die in hospital and overdose. It's important to note at this point that in the crazy religion my family is a part of, we don't go to doctors. They believe in healing through prayer. So if there was talk of a hospital visit, something bad was happening. I remember my father coming back in from the kitchen and taking my hand. I blacked out once again. I was rushed to the neighboring town's hospital. Mo's parents did the same and we arrived around the same time. I was rushed in and had N4 stuck in me. Well, they tried to stick me anyways. After the 5th attempt, the floor was spotted with blood and I had something being pumped through my veins. I was being extremely violent. At one point I punched the doctor in the face and broke his glasses. This is when they decided it would be best for my and other people's safety if I was restrained. I was tied to a bed and force-fed charcoal. It was not an easy task, but after about an hour they had it done. I was given a new four with some other kind of medical bullshit in it to calm me down. With my face, chest and neck covered in black coal residue, I finally found sleep. I came to with people surrounding me. It was a new day and peculiar things were happening. My grandmother, who does not smoke, was holding a lit cigarette. I had my sister lean down to ask her if she was smoking. She responded with a simple "No, jackass, Grandma doesn't smoke." I looked around the room to see where I was and why I was tied down. A whiteboard on the opposite wall read, "You were in the hospital, you're okay. It is, current date, and no one is going to hurt you." The nurse apparently did this because during my blackouts, I was violent, quixotic, and angry. I looked around the room for some familiar faces and I found them. My whole family was there. While restrained, I was able to look under my blanket. I was naked and there was a tube coming out of my penis. I found this odd, because I'd never been to a hospital and had no idea what a catheter was. I looked up at my forebag and it was an ear of corn. It started growing features and it soon became an ear of corn with a face. My father then asked what I was looking at and I turned to address him confidently. "Cornhead," I said with a very serious look. I looked around the room at all the odd things happening. A money clip with a $10 bill in it was laying next to a small fish on the ceiling. I thought this was amazing, so I had to tell the nearest person. My sister again. She looked up like the dumbass she is and said there was nothing there. I asked my mother if the sexy bondage was really necessary. She laughed and untied my hands. My feet were still restrained. All of a sudden the room fell away around me and I was back at Mark's house. I had a PS2 controller in my hand playing SOCOM. 5 minutes of playing had passed and the controller melted into a soft, cotton material and I kept on apologizing to Mark, saying "I'm so sorry" over and over again. I opened my eyes and I was back in the hospital. The controller was now a blanket, which I was clutching very tightly in my hands. I felt scared, vulnerable. I wept. Everyone that was close to me came and bid their well wishes, chatted with me, or tried to chat with the nonsense coming out of my mouth, and promptly left. I came to and it was dusk. My sister approached me, gave me a hug, and took my shoes off of me. She had to lift the blanket a bit to get to them and I thought she was going to expose my naked body to the few people still in the hospital room. I said, "No. Don't look under there." They took my clothes and stuffed me in a dark tube. She had her laugh, said she had to go, and did just that. It was dark now. I drifted in and out of consciousness for the better part of an hour. My aunt was at my bedside and all of a sudden, large centipedes and bugs started coming out of her ears. I was distraught, so I turned my attention to anything but her. The bugs had filled the room and were crawling all over everything. I screamed for help and my mother came to comfort me. She embraced me and told me to close my eyes. I cried hard. Then, I slept. I woke up a bit later, no more than half hour had passed. Then something caught my eye. A naked woman outside my window, dancing. She was beautiful. I remember telling myself, as soon as my mom's asleep, I'm going out there and fucking the shit out of her regardless of this catheter. I passed out before she did, and now I realize it was obviously a hallucination. I awoke the next day to more well-wishers. Then there was Boxy. Boxy was a gnome about the size of my thumb. He had climbed down from the curtain around my bed and posted up on my shoulder. He reminded me of the Travelocity gnome. I was captivated. I had the most excited look on my face as he smiled at me. Then he winked and mouthed, "Watch this." He then started to jump up and down on my shoulder. I was overjoyed and started chanting, "Jump, Boxy, jump," to the enjoyment of my current audience. I was out of it. I said things to my family that I'm not proud of. I told my grandmother to eat a dick, I told my aunt she needed to get fucked hard, and I called my other grandmother a whore. I then went out of it again. The walls melted away and I was in my room holding my guitar. I started playing and once again, it melted into a blanket. I was angry. I threw a fit. I kept repeating fuck. Fuck. What the fuck? More well-wishers, more cards, more bullshit. I came to and it was night. I looked to the window and the woman was gone. In her place was a large man in a long trench coat and fedora. He looked at me and pulled out an old 50s Thompson. He began firing through the window and I lost it. I hysterically started crying. Again my mother was there to comfort me. I fell asleep in her embrace. I awoke the next day. I felt normal again. No hallucinations. No mad psychobabble. Just normality. The nurse came in, deflated the balloon in my catheter, and pulled it out, which hurt like a motherfucker. I was able to clothe myself, get up, walk to the bathroom, and take a shit. I looked in the mirror and I had black all over me. I looked like I passed out first at a party and someone had found a Sharpie. I met Mo at the facility's shower and he looked like hell. He then told me all the bad things that he saw. At one point, he awoke to his room full of dead bodies hanging on nooses from his ceiling. I felt bad for him. I felt bad for both of us. We had taken Datura, or Jimson weed, without researching it first, and we paid dearly for it. I had lost 3 days of my fall break and hours of my life that I have no recollection of. The reason I was in the hospital for so long is because my heart almost exploded because of how high my heart rate was. I hope that by writing this I've helped inform you. This is actually 3 different Jimson weed experiences spread over several months. I acquired some Jimson seeds and was eager to try it out. Somehow I decided on 154 seeds. How I decided on that number I don't remember. I used a coffee grinder to grind the seeds up, then swallowed the grounds, washing them down with water. The seeds are small, so this was just a small amount of grounds, not hard to swallow. About 20 minutes later I started feeling weird and got really tired. I mean really tired. So I laid down and took a short nap. When I got up I had more energy and I was really starting to feel stoned. Also I was staggering a little bit like I was drunk. Another notable thing was that my vision was messed up. I was now far-sighted, which is a common side effect. I tried to chat with my lady friend on the internet, but I could not see well enough to read what she was saying. The next day she told me that I'd typed a few lines that didn't make much, then the rest of what I typed was nonsense. She couldn't even make out words anymore. So I gave up on the computer and wandered off. I don't remember much more about the night. I remember a couple of hallucinations. The main thing I remember about that experience is that the distinction between dreaming and being awake was completely erased. Also it seems it was impossible to hold a coherent line of thought. I might have had some insane conversation with my dad that night if he got up for a drink of water. I wouldn't remember if I did. He never mentioned anything odd though. At sunrise I thought I had pretty much sobered up, but I had another minor hallucination. The experience carried with it an uncomfortable feeling, a bodily feeling like being poisoned. The farsightedness was gone in less than 24 hours. Since I remember nearly nothing of the hours I was tripping, I took too much. I am a person interested in consciousness and its workings, so the complete blurring of the awake state and the dream state interested me. I wanted to try Jimson again with a smaller dosage. Weeks later I did the same thing again, except this time with much fewer seeds. Perhaps about 50. This was a big disappointment. It wasn't large enough dose for me to trip, but it was enough for me to feel very bad for a while. The feeling of anxiety in the body was not just because of a large dose, it was there with a smaller dose as well. This second time I noticed no hallucinations or altered consciousness. I thought I was probably done with Jimson after the second experiment, but I still had a lot of seeds and was still curious about its dream quality. So I decided to try it again. This time with Jimson tea and cigarette. I ground 100 seeds and boiled the grounds for 30 minutes in the microwave. I added water along to keep the amount of water roughly 1 cup. Then I strained the seeds out. If you boil in a jar with a neck like a preserves or jam jar, you won't even need a screen to separate the liquid from the grounds. I ground up an additional 35 seeds for the cigarette. Also I dried out a banana peel in the oven and crushed a little of it up for the cigarette. The banana peel was just for filler. I didn't think seed grounds would burn well by themselves. Banana peel makes mild smoke with a flavor that is not unpleasant. Some people say you can get high off of banana, but in my experience they are extremely mild, sort of relaxing effect. I consider the effects of banana peeling to be negligible compared to Jimson. I let the tea cool a little then drank it. It had nearly no flavor, just a slightly nutty taste. Then I loaded my backpack with water, fruit juice, bread, and the joint. Within about 10 minutes I started feeling odd, doped. Within about 30 minutes I was Datura stoned. I went walking in the woods near my house, woods I know very, very well. The intoxication gradually increased. At some point I took 2 puffs off the cigarette. I had intended to smoke the entire cigarette, but once in the woods I had that same bad Jimson feeling I had the 2 previous times, so I decided I didn't want any more. In hindsight I think it is a good idea I didn't smoke any more of the joint because it just would have been too much. As it is, I think I hit upon a good dosage for myself. Unlike the first time I remember what happened and I was halfway able to hold a sensible chain of thought, and unlike the second time I tripped. I fading back and forth between dreaming with my eyes open and being awake. There were both auditory and visual hallucinations. I turned around and saw this gigantic woman standing a few yards away, then she resolved into a dead tree. 1 minute I was watching and listening to two creatures talking one another, completely unaware of myself, then the voices were gone but I could still see the faces with their mouths moving, then the faces resolved into leaves. That sort of thing was typical of the trip. Jimson hallucinations are built out of what I am looking at with my eyes. This might sound fun but remember that all the time there is an uncomfortable physical feeling, and thoughts tend to be disconnected. I was relieved when I started sobering up. The clumsiness and farsightedness were there like the first time but less so. It is important to realize that Jimson weed is not classified as a psychedelic, it's classified as a deliriant. It causes delirium. I didn't have any epiphanies or insights to take away from my Jimson experiments. Maybe Don Juan knew something about its use that I do not. It seems the more I take the more chaotic my thoughts will be. Another important thing to remember is that in some cases the farsightedness lasts a couple of days. I noticed that when I wore my dad's reading glasses I could read fine. I must have been a funny sight sitting here with those old man frames on. Jimson weed is the craziest and most dangerous drug I've ever taken, and I've taken LSD, mushrooms, and DOI. Like I said before, I didn't find the Jimson experience enjoyable. Datura, Jimson weed, devil's weed, a powerful substance that no person should ever have to harness mentally. It will punish you fervently and without sympathy for treading into its territory. It will laugh as it blends the terrors of your imagination with your everyday life. It is complete delirium. A momentary detachment from all that is real and true, at least how we perceive such things. If you're able to stay conscious and remember the experience, you will not be able to distinguish between your fabricated projections and the solid world that dominates our everyday lives. It is brutal enlightenment. If you are to truly be punished by her, then it will control your mind, body and soul. You will awaken bruised, cut, battered and confused. Worst of all, you'll not even be able to recall the things it showed you. Most likely some very important things, too. Do not try Datura unless you are willing to take responsibility for the most intense and unexpected actions of your person. Do not take it unless you are prepared for the utter intensity of the void. Do not take it unless you are willing to risk leaving this place forever. Being an experienced tripper and having done most hallucinatory substances, I decided I would take that risk. It was foolish. The experience was intense and horrifying. Every word you're about to read here is as true as I can recall it. The most miraculous thing of all being that I came out of her grasp without much damage. On a normal summer afternoon, the seeds were acquired. I ate 3 big ones. The friend who accompanied me was going to trip along, but we both decided that one should sit, being that this was unknown territory. He gave me the honor of tripping since I was a bit more experienced. Within 15 minutes I felt physically devastated. My mouth was dry, my muscles were tense and sore and my stomach was nervous. There was no feeling in my head, no headache or anything, and it seemed surprisingly clear, though I felt drunk and incompetent. "Dude, I'm going to close my eyes and go to sleep," I said as I drifted off. Okay," replied my friend. His voice seemed stretched, deep. I went into a lucid dream state. This is what followed. I was laying down in a room, choking a black cat. It thrashed and screamed. Its eyes were protruding from its skull. It fought back by clawing at my arms and face. After it died, I was absorbed by an intense thirst. I got up from where I was laying and found this deep well that was built out of metal. It's hard to explain the actual contraption, but it was shiny and new. The water within was clear and cold. I drank and drank from the well, but it could not quench my thirst. I turn around and there's a faucet spilling more precious cold water into a drain. I put my lips to it and drank like a wild animal, but it still could not quench my thirst. Then I was surrounded by water. But none of it could satisfy me. I was going to die of dehydration despite vast resources. I panicked. Bang! My eyes opened, sort of. I was laying on the couch, not my original place of rest, and my friend was gone. When I woke, I heard stomping. Big heavy boots walking around behind me. Through the kitchen, into the bathroom. Whoever it was, they walked like a herd of buffalo. Doors opened, slammed, opened, slammed. The windows started to bulge in and out with a deep croaking moaning noise. An illogical thought entered my mind: the nukes were dropped, and this is what ground zero is like. I got up from the couch. Fell on my face. Struggled to stand again. God damn, I was thirsty. Perhaps the dream I had was telling me to wake up and drink. I clawed my way to the sink, turned on the faucet and drank. At this point, I didn't care if it was tap water. After bloating my stomach with liquid, I looked stupidly around me. This was not the room I was in before. Where the hell was my friend? The stomping came again, and I looked behind me. Through the window I saw a shadow of a person. Many people, actually. They were pressing the glass inward, like it was flexible but liquid. More stomping. What the fuck is that? I run around the strange apartment, chasing after who was walking around. I'd follow it into a room, but then it would be in another room when I thought I caught him, her, it. I walk into the main room again, and there's a dead cat in the middle of the floor. Strangled. I freak. Did I do this? Certainly not. The cat I strangled was black. This is a tabby. The steps approached from behind. I turn. There's a dead man standing behind me. His mantra becomes enveloped in melancholy as he repeats it, "You killed my cat, you killed my cat, you killed my cat, you killed my cat." Deeper and deeper into despair. Skip ahead. I awaken at the bottom of some stairs, broken arm. I know I'm awake, but I'm still hallucinating. It's horrible. Insects, perspective shifting, strange ghosts about. My friend left me alone. I scared him with my delirium. Supposedly, the straw that broke his back was when I said, "This is the new Inquisition. I am here to inquire and cause pain. Now lay down and die." I noticed that I was laying on the steps of an apartment about a block from my friends. Supposedly, I had been ripping at this person's door telling them to let me out of the endless square. They had struggled with me and in my stupor I had fallen down the stairs. The ambulance was called, the police were called, and the rest is pretty self-explanatory. Luckily, most authority figures in my life were understanding of my forays. They expressed sympathy and were simply glad that I was alive. I apologized to my friend for frightening him, but quickly relieved him of any further sitting duties. I do not regret my experience. Still also trying to figure out what my brain was going through. Everything seemed so important but so encrypted. I was scared, but I still feel that the experience was a good lesson for me. This drug is a battlefield of the mind and body. Do not even attempt to try it unless you're 100% ready to deal with the consequences. Be safe. Be careful. Tap the void.
I had the craziest experience of my life and to this day I can't figure it out. My friends refuse to talk about it. Until recently I thought the whole trip lasted about 12 hours, from 5 p.m. when I drank the tea to about 5 in the morning, but after finally getting my friends to talk a little I was out of it for more than 3 days. It's amazing I wasn't in the hospital. The only way I know I wasn't was in the hospital or police custody was because obviously if that had happened there would have been consequences when I came to. How did all this start? I was reading about Datura more than a year before the actual trip because I was obsessed with the idea of hallucinating but couldn't get anyone to sell me mushrooms, and while on a walk with my dog realized that at the back of someone's driveway, right on a main road I was actually seeing a Datura stramonium plant. I kept it in the back of my mind and went back the next year in August to find the plant flowering with spiky seed pods almost ripe. I was wearing cargo pants and had brought scissors, so I just carefully trimmed off 5 or 6 2 to 3 feet foot branches, stuck the branches in my pockets and took it all home and clipped it into bits that I left to dry on top of a fluorescent light. The material included a lot of beautiful flowers, about 15 seed pods and probably 2 pounds of stems. It took about 3 weeks for the plant material to actually dry all the way through, especially the woody stems. Then one Friday night after school, I think it was the week before homecoming, I had a friend over, a guy I liked, and other people kept stopping by. I'd planned in advance to make a little tea to try that night and the friend was just there by coincidence. I remember standing over the stove carefully stirring the liquid, chopping the plant material with a stainless steel spoon and giggling manically every time someone came in and asked what the heck I was doing. I added about a half a pound of material and an even amount of leaves, stems, and dried flowers to 1 quart of liquid. When I strained it, the plant material looked like a washed out spinach and the tea was a dark golden brown with a very warm fruity but bitter smell. I put the used plant material in a bowl in the fridge for later and continued to boil down the liquid. That took about 2 hours. All the while I kept getting chills of anticipation and having a great time talking to my friend. Finally the tea was done. I poured most of it into a thick plastic water bottle which I stowed in the back of the fridge but poured half a coffee cup worth for myself. I was really scared, terrified, but I mastered my fear and I remember saying, "Cheers, I'm in your hands now, universe." Looking back, I shouldn't have drank that much. But I did, and the last thing I really remember is drinking the bitter grassy tea. Then my friend, who I'll call him, asking if I wanted to go for a ride with him, getting in the car and riding around. Next thing I knew I was in a strange car in the back seat, in the dark, parked in front of someone's house. I thought I was alone at first, then it dawned on me we were dropping him off at his house, though who we were I don't know. Then I freaked out because I didn't want him to go and tried to follow him out of the car onto lawn, but he disappeared. Then my friend, who I thought was him but looking back seemed like a stranger, told me, "Come on, we're walking now, we've got to walk." As though he'd just magically appeared again, and I felt deja vu and I asked, "Where are we going?" And didn't get an answer and kept on a whole conversation with this person. Everything was so vividly real, and seemed normal, but also not, like the boogeyman could jump out at any minute and I'd shake his hand. I remember being cold and hesitant, my body was jerky as though my whole being was stuttering, and the street light seemed bright and we were walking into the dark, and that scared me and my body didn't seem to want to follow my commands. And walking in the dark with this person on my right for what seemed like a really long time, but I don't remember going anywhere, just cool darkness and blurs of light. The next thing I remember is walking up to a house where this one guy lived with my friend B, and her friend Gina, and it was night still. I thought the same one. We knocked on the door and apparently this guy was waiting for his parents to get home or someone was sleeping, so we had to be really quiet, and I remember tiptoeing in and it was the funniest thing on the planet. Then things start to get weirder. I think I was coming down, but I was really freaked out and I was sitting talking to them, but it must have been gibberish and I felt really self-conscious, but things seemed okay. I had a big shock. I remember a dark shape passing in front of me across the house, and for some reason all the lights were out. I got scared and started to stand, and a hand, my friend B's hand I think, goes over my mouth because I was about to call out and aloud, "SH." And her pushing me down to sit on the floor and just holding her hand over my mouth and holding me down. I felt there was a good reason for her doing that, so I gave in and did as she directed. Then she released me and that seemed really funny. Then we moved into a bedroom with the hugest bed and a TV playing and a fish tank. I laid on the bed and watched the fish tank, and the next thing I know I realize I'm trying to convince everyone in the room, 4 people, to save the rats that are drowning in the fish tank, and I shut my mouth because I realized there were no rats. I remember asking what time it was, and apparently I'd asked that many times, and my friends got angry with me and I started crying and I said I was sorry. I lost a cigarette and I don't even smoke. I remember asking them to help me find it because I was panicked it would burn the place down. My friends then passed me a bowl of weed and my friend B held the pipe in my head because apparently I'd already burnt myself twice on the pipe and just told me to inhale. I kept going in and out of some strange state. Finally it was time to go. I think we'd been at that house till about 5 in the morning and I got into a car, whose I'm not sure, after climbing out the guy's bedroom window with my friends and getting home. I was really tired. I went to bed with the worst dry throat after peeing what seemed a flood and finally felt a bit better. I saw my room, my whole room, and kept startling awake, realizing I was looking around and seeing things with my eyes closed. I'd open them and not be able to focus on anything. My room is lit with a backlight. It's my nightlight, so everything was purple but dim enough not to hurt my eyes, and my sight with my eyes closed was crystal clear, but I couldn't see anything with my eyes open. It was dark and blurry. I slept most of the day, which for a weekend wasn't unusual, and then I woke up to my mom home about 9 p.m. What the clock said, it was hard to read but I made it out, and she asked me if I'd done my homework. She worked most of the weekend and was gone a lot. I have no idea if I was home or not, but apparently it was already Monday and the 3-day weekend was over. I had to be at school in the morning. That was the first real thing that happened, I think. I reeked, there was dirt under my fingernails, I was greasy and needed a shower, My head hurt from my eyes still being so dilated and I felt very twitchy. My favorite jacket that I'd worn had a pocket torn off, somehow I smelled like beer, and my shoes were really muddy. The only thing that I actually found out was that the guy whose house me and my friend B and her friend Gina were at actually happened, and he came up to me and asked, "Are you okay now?" To which I answered, "Yes." And he said, "Good, don't ever do that again, I was about ready to kick you out of my house." He just walked away when I asked what happened. So that scared me. I was ashamed I was a burden to my friends. Looking back years later, I don't know what I was thinking, but I believed all that had happened in one day for months and then finally started to figure out some bits and pieces. I don't know what happened, probably don't want to. Everything was so real, I never had a single hallucination. It was like I was taken to a whole different world where everything could happen. All my feelings were fleeting, transient, so at least my fear was intense but not overwhelming. An interesting note, apparently I was home at some point, and I made myself a Datura omelette with the leftover plant I'd boiled to make tea, which I puked all over my bedroom floor, but my friend B cleaned it up. She hinted about that for years and finally told me. Something that really scared me was a girl I'll call T who hinted I'd stopped by school during the weekend while she was having band practice in the gym, but if that were true, nah. There have also been hints that I started a fire somewhere, but I don't have any memory, though I did have burns on my hands, I think from a weed pipe. I may do this again, if I can find another Datura plant and some sober people to keep me inside my house safe and sound for as long as it takes. The Datura plant I used before was gone within a few months. I think the people who owned the property caught on to what it was, or they were just tired of it blocking the front of their car.
Datura metalloid trip reports and analysis. Trip 1, August 11, 1998. I have 5 Datura metalloid plants in my greenhouse, all about 2 months old. I picked 2 leaves from the biggest plant, which is about 1.5 feet high. The leaves were about 7 inches long and 5 inches wide. Myself, my brother G and a friend P ate half a leaf each. They were eaten within about 15 minutes of being picked. Myself and P had empty stomachs, but G had just eaten a big meal. P had drunk a bottle of wine. My experience. 9:25 p.m. ate half of 1 Datura metalloid leaf. 9:34 p.m. feel a bit different. 9:39 p.m. feel slightly dizzy. 9:55 p.m. my eyes feel tired. 10:01 p.m. my mouth and throat are starting to feel dry. 10:15 p.m. my mouth and throat are very dry. 11:33 p.m. my pupils are dilated. While writing the timed report, above, during the Datura trip, my writing deteriorated significantly from 9:55 p.m. onwards. G went to bed about 11 p.m. without experiencing any effects. By midnight, P and I felt extremely tired. P went home about 12:30 a.m. I went to bed about 1 a.m. Despite feeling very tired, I found it difficult to sleep. My legs felt restless and I kept tossing and turning. I know I was hallucinating strongly all night, but most of it is a blur. I can only clearly remember 2 hallucinations that kept recurring. 1, while in bed I was very thirsty. I'd hallucinate I was reaching for a bottle of spring water I always keep beside my bed. When I'd try to grab it, my fingers would go through it as if I, or the bottle, was a ghost. The surprise would cause me to snap out of the hallucination and I'd find I was just lying in bed without having moved at all. 2, hallucinating I was talking to someone. Mostly I thought I was talking to P. I'd see him standing on the other side of my bedroom. I'd be talking away with him quietly in my mind for a few minutes, but when I'd go to actually speak out loud to him I'd snap out of the hallucination. Through the whole night, I'd fall asleep for what seemed like a few minutes, then hallucinate for a few minutes, then realize I was hallucinating and suddenly wake up into reality again. The next day I got up about 1 p.m. I couldn't focus on things within 12 inches of my face. My pupils were still a bit dilated and I felt slightly dizzy and unsteady when walking. The following day I felt back to normal. P's experience. When he got home, his brother said his eyes were very red. He tried reading a newspaper and an encyclopedia but couldn't focus on the small print. He said he peaked about 4:30 a.m. Here are the hallucinations he experienced through the night. 1. Saw a greenish aura around his hands. 2. Could feel something like a snail moving in the back of his throat. 3. Kept having imaginary conversations with me, G, his dad, and one of his brothers. He actually kept saying what? Out loud as they spoke to him. 4. When in bed, a big man and a big dog appeared right beside his bed. They were black featureless silhouettes. He was scared but knew he was hallucinating. He tried to touch them but his hand went right through them. He switched on the light and they disappeared. 5. He saw the silhouette of a dwarf running across the room. 6. When in the kitchen he thought the milk carton was speaking to him. He even said what? Out loud to the carton. 7. He saw flies, a giant wasp and a giant spider in his bedroom. 8. A religious picture of Jesus on his bedroom wall started making faces at him. 9. Kept hallucinating he was smoking a cigarette in bed but then noticed there was none in his hand. Then he'd think he dropped it in his bed and worriedly go searching for it. I was talking to him at 3:45 p.m. the next day and he said he felt too uncoordinated to drive his moped safely. G's experience. He didn't notice any effects until the next morning. On the bus to work he started having imaginary conversations but would snap out of the hallucination just as he was about to talk out loud. That was all. Trip 2, August 13, 1998. Picked 2 very large leaves from my second biggest Datura metalloid plant, each about 8 inches long and 8 inches wide. My brother G and his friends K and E ate the leaves. K ate one whole leaf, G ate half a leaf, and E ate half a leaf also. All had empty stomachs. 10 p.m. ate their leaves. Midnight all 3 have dilated pupils, dry mouths and dizziness. They are much less talkative than before. 12:45 a.m. K seems nervous and can't focus on things 1 to 2 feet from his face. G and E's vision is slightly blurred. G has red eyes. K is restless but the other 2 are relaxed after having gone for a long walk. 1:40 a.m. all 3 are so tired they've gone to bed. 1:50 a.m. K, while in bed, has started hallucinating that he is reading books. Also had an imaginary conversation with Perry Mason but immediately forgot the details. 2:15 a.m. I went to bed. At about 5 a.m., K and E walked home because they couldn't sleep. They live 5 miles away. The next day I rang Keith at 4:30 p.m. He said that last night he was having imaginary conversations with his dad but couldn't remember much. He still felt a bit high and his vision wasn't fully back to normal. G said he didn't remember anything after he went to bed. He felt fine the next morning. He may have built up a tolerance. I met E a few days later. He said he and K were having imaginary conversations and visual hallucinations while walking home, including seeing a horse in a field. Trip 3, 14th of August 1998. I picked 1 leaf, 7 inches long, 5 inches wide, from my biggest Datura metalloid plant, 2 months old, 1.5 feet high. I had an empty stomach and ate the leaf within a few minutes of picking it. 9 p.m. ate leaf. 9:13 p.m. feel a bit different. 9:25 p.m. feel slightly dizzy. 9:28 p.m. starting to get difficult to focus on things near my face. 9:37 p.m. my mouth is getting dry. 9:48 p.m. my mouth and throat are very dry. 10:04 p.m. my legs are starting to feel restless. I'm very thirsty, tired and dizzy. My eyes are a bit red and my pupils are a bit dilated. 10:15 p.m. starting to get mild hallucinations with eyes closed. The sentence after this is illegible. 10:48 p.m. I'm too tired to stay awake. The sentence after this is illegible. My writing got extremely bad from 10:15 p.m. onwards. I went to bed about 11 p.m. 15th August, the next morning, still in bed. 9:06 a.m. I hallucinated I was talking to P, a friend, on the phone. 10:28 a.m. hallucinated I was talking to P and was also trying to pick up imaginary objects. I thought I was dropping imaginary things and then start looking for them. I know I had lots of other hallucinations through the night but I couldn't remember them. My eyes were still a bit dilated and I still felt slightly dizzy. It wasn't as strong as the half leaf I took on the 11th August. I must have built up some tolerance. 16th August. Feel back to normal. Trip 4, 16th of August 1998. Picked 5 very large leaves from different plants. Went with P to his brother's house where he, his brother J, and J's girlfriend T ate the leaves. P, J and T ate 1 leaf each. 6 p.m. all 3 ate their leaves. 6:22 p.m. T feels a bit dizzy and has tired eyes. P feels different. 6:33 p.m. P is getting a dry throat. J is acting differently. J and T are drinking beer, P wine. 6:38 p.m. T has a dry throat and is tired. P is a little dizzy and J has a bit of a dry throat. 6:43 p.m. J and T say their drinks taste horrible and can't drink them anymore. 7:01 p.m. all 3 feel very tired. 7:04 p.m. T is very dizzy. J feels cold. 7:11 p.m. J has become quiet. 7:53 p.m. J and T's vision is blurred. They feel weak. 9:21 p.m. T thought for a second she was in a nightclub. Also thought she was smoking a cigarette. P's vision is blurred. 9:35 p.m. T had an imaginary conversation lasting half a minute or so. T went to bed about 10:45 p.m. P and I went home at 11:20 p.m. J went to bed about 11:30 p.m. Just before we left the house, J thought someone tapped him on the shoulder. He even looked behind his armchair to see if someone was there. Also, myself and P were discussing ringing a taxi to go home. After a while John looked out the window and said he thought our taxi was here. We told him we hadn't rung the taxi yet. The whole evening he kept thinking there was someone looking in the window too. P's experience. After he went home he hallucinated that he was seeing insects crawling around and was hearing voices. He couldn't sleep. However, he said it was much weaker than the half-leaf he ate on the 11th August. He probably built up some tolerance. J's experience. After P and I left, he had the following hallucinations. 1. Could hear someone calling his name. 2. Saw his brother running across the kitchen. 3. Was telling a taxi driver to bring him home. 4. Heard a guy telling him to stay away from Tracy. 5. Thought he was smoking a cigarette and had dropped it in bed. 6. Saw a monkey on the wind chimes that hang from the ceiling in his bedroom. 7. Thought he was in other places. D's experience. She had the following hallucinations. 1. Saw a girl standing beside her bed. 2. The wardrobe in the bedroom seemed to be covered inside and outside with insects. This made her scream. 3. Thought she was in other places. 4. When walking to the toilet, something grabbed her ankles and said boo. She said both of them couldn't sleep and they were hallucinating all night and this morning. Both of them were talking in their sleep. Trip 5, 20th of August 1998. P's other brother T and his girlfriend ate a leaf each. They were the 2 leaves left over from the trip on the 16th. They had been kept in the fridge but had wilted. They became tired and went to bed but had no other effects. The leaves probably lost their potency due to being a few days old. Analysis. Based on the 5 preceding trip reports, the main effects of Datura metalloid appear to be 1. Tiredness. 2. Dizziness. 3. Dry mouth. 4. Dilated pupils. 5. Restlessness. 6. Strong hallucinations. 7. Inability to focus on things 1 to 2 feet from the eyes. 8. Red eyes. 9. Forgetfulness. Effects last 12 to 24 hours, probably longer if a larger dose is taken. Hallucinations often contain the following. 1. Imaginary conversations, usually with family members or friends. 2. Insects. 3. Thinking you're smoking a cigarette. Tolerance seems to develop rapidly. I estimate it would take 1 to 2 weeks to wear off completely.